the largest fire that we had in history. And who did we see on the front lines? It was people that was in orange that are our incarcerated folks that's fighting these fires. And I think the misconception that people is having with that is like, oh, well, it's just to be $19 an hour. No, we're saying when it's a large fire, something like that big, the magnitude of that, they deserve to be compensated not only for their time, right, but for them putting themselves in harm's way. And I got emotional a little bit. Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, so good.
Because when you really think about, like, you know, our incarcerated folks that's on that front line, you know, it really reminds me of, you know, going through the South. You know what I'm saying? And seeing them digging away. You know what I'm saying? And it's like they all have their language on how to get things done because they're training for this, right? Just how a basketball player, a football player, or even someone that's going to school to be a lawyer, how you study and you train, that's what they're doing.
Welcome to the Know Your Rights Camp podcast. I'm your host, Amir, Whitaker, and today we're joined by Adam Cain of Initiate Justice. Peace, Adam.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to discuss prison labor and the fight to increase and create prison wages for people. So Adam began his journey with Initiate Justice in 2016 while incarcerated, later being an inside organizer and advocate for policy change through Prop 57, which actually helped secure his early release in 2020. Since returning home, he has continued his work supporting inside organizers and graduated from the Institute of Impacted Leaders in 2021. A survey sent to prison in 2016 inquiring about Prop 57 was the beginning of Adam Cain's involvement with Initiate Justice. In 2018, he became an inside organizer, in addition to facilitating various self-help groups, mentoring others, and pursuing a higher education. He was able to return home early in 2020 through the work of Prop 57. And immediately continued his advocacy. After graduating from the Institute of Impacted Leaders in spring of 2021, Adam joined Initiate Justice's staff to continue his work with inside organizers. Adam is impacted by 14 years of incarceration. So Adam, can you start by telling us a little more about yourself and what you do with Initiate Justice?
Yeah, for sure. Once again, thanks for having me. So at Initiate Justice, we are a 501c3 organization, abolition, social justice, the whole nine. And so my job at Initiate Justice is I go back into prisons and I teach incarcerated folks about civic engagement, the legislation process, person-centered language, intersectionality. A lot of these topics and different things people that are incarcerated don't know about. And so we share and educate them on getting involved. But Initiate Justice as a whole, we are focused to having an inside and outside approach to peeling back the layers on the onion, if you will. And so that's my job at Initiate Justice. That's what I do. So my day can go from talking to different wardens, talking to different guards, talking to different people that are incarcerated, and taking workshops inside of prison. So a lot of talking to the powers to be, if you will, that allow us to go in and share the education.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for your organizing and work.
For sure. Thank you.
And so Prop 57 sounded like it was a spark to help get you in that. Can we talk about what Prop 57 is?
Yeah.
But first, actually, for our users, because many people may not be in states with propositions. I believe only 19 states actually have a proposition process where the general citizens can actually petition to get something on the ballot to change the Constitution. So California and about 18 other states have this process. But what was Prop 57 about?
So Prop 57... at the time, back in 2016, it was a proposition, like you said, came from the peoples, to allow people that are incarcerated to earn more time off, right? We know in California it says the prison rate is through the roof, right? And so at that time, they was trying to figure out how can they lower the numbers. So this was proposed, and it ended up passing. So when it passed, that allowed people, if you had a violent case or if you had like certain different kind of cases, or offenses, you can be able to earn a little more time off, but it was based on like an incentive type program. So for example, a lot of people wasn't going to school or trying to get education, but then Prop 57 passed, and now if you go to education and you finish a class, at the time you was earning 3 weeks off, 2 weeks off, different things like that. And so I got involved with Initiate Justice and Prop 57 because I had a friend that I was really cool with, Tanya. Shout out to Tanya, I love her. She sent me a survey, and when I got that survey, it just made sense and it felt good because I was getting questions that I've never got asked before, especially being incarcerated. When I was younger, you know, growing up in church, 2-parent household, I experienced a lot of different things. But at that moment, being incarcerated and how we was getting treated, that paper said a lot to me. So it just made sense for me to make copies and pass them out to people and leave them in designated areas.
You was organizing.
Oh, I was organizing, and I didn't even understand what I was doing, but it just seemed right. You know, it just seemed right. But once again, these were things I was taught when I was younger, and it kind of came back full circle. So that was my initiation to Initiate Justice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been working with Initiate Justice for almost a decade now, starting on the inside, now on the outside.
Yeah. Yep. So 2016, 2017, well, going back, 2016, we get Prop 57 passed, 2017, then 2018. I stopped for a second because I was already going to college, but at this time it was like really crunch time because Prop 57 just opened up the door. It was a Rehabilitation Act.
Right.
So it opened up the door for a lot of different ways to earn time off. So I went from going to school to facilitating different groups because if you earn a couple hours, like a certain amount of hours, then you get like 3 days off. So I was just busy, and it got a little bit too heavy for me. And so I took a step back, but honestly, I ended up kind of like stepping it up a little bit more because it was more people that was coming in that didn't know about different laws that we was working on at the time, and they wanted to know. So I ended up becoming an inside organizer officially, where I'm somebody that's a representative, if you will, that's advocating on the inside based on the laws that Initiate Justice is trying to get passed, or, you know, something that we don't agree with or whatever.
Right. No, that's powerful. And there's a lot of people on the inside fighting for their freedom, right?
For sure.
Fighting for the freedom and liberation of all people, incarcerated people. So,
Right.
So thanks again for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So you talked about how Prop 57 was called the Rehabilitation Act, right? But this system was always painted and portrayed as being, correctional facilities and rehabilitation. But we know, especially in California, it was not, right? California, especially, you know, being the birthplace of like 3 strike laws, and actually had a Supreme Court case that said the prisons here were so overcrowded that it was unconstitutional and unfair, you know, and at one point California was building more prisons than universities.
Right.
So what are some other things within our system that are maybe not focused on rehabilitation, or some of the barriers that exist in our current system? Because you mentioned abolition earlier too, right? Describe what abolition is to you as well, because this system that we have isn't viewed as something that's feasible for many people.
Right. As a person that's incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, and, you know, going through the system, just like you highlighted about rehabilitation, like it was no rehabilitation there, right? Everything that I've done and I've learned was self-will, just being able to have access to, but not necessarily how to get to the access, if that makes sense. And so even with Prop 57, right, like this, you know, in politics, it's a give and take, right? So even though that bill was good to help people that was incarcerated, that still was considered borderline bad because that gave CDCR the authority to do anything they want, pretty much. So, you know, even now it's a case that's going on where CDCR was like, you know what, we starting to give out too much time. So, you know, we want to take back all the time that we said y'all can earn from going to classes and et cetera, et cetera. So it's always a fight. So it's just inside the system. It's, you know, it's designed to look a certain way, right? But behind that look, it's a whole lot going on where it's actually oppression. You know, it's no access to people connecting and being human, right? We live and we go through things, and now we get stuck in that world and we don't have no help. We don't have no access. We don't And the little that they do give us is only because it has to look good, right? The outside of the building has to look good.
Right.
But if you go inside the building and you start looking in the walls, looking in the floor, you're gonna see some things that needs to be repaired and actually just torn down. You know what I'm saying? And so getting back to abolition, what it means to me, I feel like it's a world that we create. A lot of things since the beginning of time coming with laws and being diplomatic and different things like that have been man-made. Right. All these laws that we have been people, right, that have sat at a table, came up with certain ideas and was like, yo, now we got to influence the people.
Right.
You know? And so what abolition looks like to me is not only just saying, hey, we want to, get away with this, but what can we do before it starts? Right? If people got access to housing, people got access to food, the essential things that we need, then we wouldn't have no high crime rate, et cetera, et cetera. Exactly. We wouldn't need no prisons, because everybody is taken care of. And that starts with not only just us in the community, but it starts with people that come out of our communities and get into these government positions.
Exactly. Yeah, with prisons specifically, I always think there was a time before prisons.
Right.
There's going to be a time after prisons, right? These are not institutions that have always been here. And, correctional officers essentially evolved from slave catchers with police, right? And these are professions rooted in our oppression. So many folks like yourself, like myself, we don't see these systems existing if we're supposed to have our freedom and exercise it fully.
Right.
So there are lots of programs that are painted as being rehabilitative and different things within the prison. Let's just call it an industry, the industry, right?
Facts.
But some of these programs are exploitive and allow for example, essentially slave labor in prisons because of the 13th Amendment and this exception that allows for, slavery to end except for payment, except for punishment as crime.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience? Because I understand you may have been a firefighter while incarcerated as well, right?
Yeah, I was. Thank you. Where do I start? Because I done seen so many different levels of modern day slavery, right? Like from someone that's helping clean up different cells or even working in the kitchen, for example, and, working in the kitchen and you only getting paid 20 cents, if that, 8 cents. Another job I can bring up where we're talking about slave labor is Prison Industrial Authority, right? This is called PIA. And inside of prison, everything is made from PIA. When I say everything, I mean literally everything from the desk to the shoes to the clothes. These is all made from people that are incarcerated. The slave labor really kicks in because they're getting paid pennies, but you got major corporations that's going through them to get things done. So I ask you and ask our guests, have y'all ever been in a restaurant and seen a white towel that got like a blue line going down of it or like an orange one? Those towels right there are made from people that are incarcerated. So you got restaurants, right? We need towels to clean up. So they contract and do different things through the PIA. PIA do have some advantages because when you come home, you can actually go into that job, into the industry, right? So when I was inside, I worked in the laundry industry, and I was a lead clerk, and I was getting paid $1 an hour, right?
Wow.
In prison, that's like I'm balling, literally. And so
compared to 20 cents an hour,
compared to 20 cents, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what's funny is that same job that I was doing, if I was free at that moment and I had that job, that's a $70,000 job.
Wow.
For someone that's fresh out of prison, like that's pretty good, especially at that time, 2016, I believe it was. So, that's just one example of slave labor. And then crossing over, talking about, me going to the firehouse, right? And so I'm earning all this time off. Prop 57 opened up the door. And so now I'm earning time off. So at first I wasn't able to go to a fire camp or to the firehouse because of the circumstances in my case, right? Just to give a little backstory, not to go too deep. Former gang member, right? Got caught up in some gang stuff. And because of what I got caught up in, it was some serious charges. And so if you was on this list of different kind of charges, you cannot go to the firehouse, you cannot do that, right?
Almost like beyond redemption.
Really, it is. And so Prop 57 come around, now that door is open for me to be able to go into a firehouse. So I go to the firehouse, and well, I was able to drop levels, right? And so levels is, think of like security. So you got 4, 3, 2, 1, 4 being maximum security, level 1 being pretty much free, but you still behind gates. And then as a firefighter in the firehouse, you doing what you doing. As long as you there for count and you working out, you doing your program and you training, you good. And so I get to the firehouse, and I was happy, and I'm like, oh, I'm in a firehouse. And so I get cleared. The training that I had to go through was super crazy. Talk about mentally and physically was on a whole nother level. Like, I thought I was in shape, working out on the yard with the fellas.
Yeah.
But I wasn't in shape compared to when you have to put on, your uniform, and you got this tank on your back, and, you just boots and everything. You got your gear on, And so, I was happy, and I got cleared. And what happened is we went out on a call, right? A call is where we get in the fire truck and we go to a scene. And in the firehouse, I was on the engine, but I just got done training, so I wasn't one. I was like hands on, and we will respond to traffic collisions, right by the freeway. And so we get on the call, and I'm like, oh wow, it was like my adrenaline was going, and it was amazing because I really felt like I'm giving back, right? I'm doing something with myself, right? I'm getting ready to come home at the end of the year, and then we come back, and time is going. What was funny is when we come back, we end up having canteen. Canteen is where you go to store, right? So we come back, we get undressed, we sleep, we wake up. Next day, waiting for canteen. And so when we was going to canteen, everybody was like, oh, the money came through. So I'm like, oh, okay, like what y'all getting paid? And they was like, oh man, I get paid 8 cents. I get paid 15. I'm like, so what's max out pay? I think max out pay at the time for like a lead firefighter, the driver, was like 21 cents.
Wow, are you serious?
I'm dead serious. And we're doing all the work. We're responding to house calls.
Yeah.
Right? We're responding to cell fire. Like,
yeah, literally risking your life, and the physical, mental toll of it is like everything that a normal firefighter would do for tens of thousands of dollars a year. But y'all are getting pennies per hour.
And I'm talking about we're responding to calls all through the day because there's things happening, from people passing out to people getting harmed. I mean, it's things. We're talking about prison, right? So things is happening still, And so, that really opened up my eyes, and I was like, wow. But at that moment, I knew it wasn't about the money for me, but I had a serious problem with that because once again, mind you, I already got it in my head because I'm coming from PIA, the Prison Industrial Authority, Industry Authority, right? And I'm like, this is slave labor. So seeing it on that level was like, wow, it was yeah, I was just like, it was crazy. And then we got like a little extra pay whenever we did a fire. So if you do a fire, right, you get paid a little bit more, And so that was something that I had experience with as well, as in a wildland fire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, it was hundreds of incarcerated folks fighting the fires, the big, historic, largest fires we had in the history of our country, and they wouldn't have been reduced without the work and sacrifices of our enslaved brothers and sisters. But it's funny, they're on the line too, risking death and everything as well. I imagine y'all have to sign a waiver or something saying if you die in the case of this, and you have to sign all of that and waive your rights, and still for pennies on a dollar. And even though I believe it's increased a little bit now since then, it's still pretty much exploitation. And now, thankfully, there's some legislation pending to change it. Assemblymember Isaac Bryan has proposed some legislation, I think, to raise it to at least $19 an hour, which I'm sure is still significantly below what you would make if you were not incarcerated. But that's some improvement, right? And how would that kind of change improve the conditions for someone who's incarcerated, depending on canteen and other things?
Okay, yeah, the great question. And shout out to Isaac Bryan. That's my guy.
Yeah,
working on AB 247. So I'm honored that I was chosen to be a spokesperson, if you will, to help him push that. So when we looking at $19 an hour, first let's be realistic. It can happen, right? But the odds of that happening is like...
Right. It's a lot of ops saying spending too much money on these folks.
And I totally understand because that's how they feel. But the reality of it is, right? and you spoke about this earlier, the largest fire that we had in history, and who did we see on the front lines? It was people that was in orange that are our incarcerated folks that's fighting these fires. And I think the misconception that people is having with that is like, oh, well, it's just to be $19 an hour. No, we're saying when it's a large fire, something like that big, the magnitude of that, they deserve to be compensated not only for their time, right, but for them putting themselves in harm's way. And I got emotional a little bit. Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, so good.
Because when you really think about, like, you know, our incarcerated folks that's on that front line, you know, it really reminds me of, you know, going through the South. You know what I'm saying? And seeing them digging away. You know what I'm saying? And it's like they all have their language on how to get things done because they're training for this, right? Just how a basketball player, a football player, or even someone that's going to school to be a lawyer, how you study and you train, that's what they're doing.
Right.
And a lot of these people are all of the people that are in fire, let me clear this. All of the people that are in fire camp or in the firehouse, they are coming home because you can't have a life sentence and you have to have a certain amount of time within to go home. I mean, to be there. So if you got 5 years left, but nothing under 2 years type of deal. So it's like a little bracket between a little window between 2 to 5. Excuse me, it's been a while. I forgot how it go, but it's something like that. So like if you had 6 more years, like 7 years, you couldn't go. It had to be 5 years, but it got to be nothing under than 2. Okay, so they're coming home. You know what I mean? And the good thing that I can say, what California have done and recognize is that, okay, if you come home and you want to be a wildland firefighter, you can be a wildland firefighter.
Nice.
So a lot of this is, if we really look at the trajectory with this bill and what this can influence, this can really change. Because now it's, instead of the pipeline to prison, right? It's coming from prison, crossing over into the field, actually working, right? And being experienced in something that they do.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, I hope we do be able to pass that bill, and that, you know, we take it and it don't get vetoed. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a big bill, and what that money would do for individuals that's fighting on those front lines is so much. You know, if somebody don't owe restitution, right? Because, you know, if you owe restitution, they're taking more than 55% of what you owe. So that means every dollar you get sent in, you have to give a percentage to restitution, which I understand it. You know, punish me, don't punish my family, right? But for the ones that don't have restitution, they will be able to send money to their family.
Wow.
They will be able to say, hey, go have a good dinner with moms for mom's birthday, or, you know, here's something special for Christmas, right? Or even the necessities of being able to purchase and buy hygiene themselves.
Exactly.
Especially with the crazy markups. I seen a deodorant in the store the other day, and I'm always reminded of little things like this. I'm like, wow, this deodorant is $3. I was telling my wife, I said, if this was inside, this same deodorant is like $10.
What? That's ridiculous, considering it's literally one of the most vulnerable and exploited populations, forced to work for pennies on the dollar, and you're gonna sell deodorant for $10.
Right.
You know, and you're forcing them, you've kidnapped them and put them into these cages in the first place, and now you want to profit off them in these different ways.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very, very sad.
California outlawed slavery in 1850 in its first state constitution, but it held on to a clause that is still in effect 174 years later. Inmates earn anywhere from 16 cents per hour for basic labor to $10.24 per day for inmates who work as firefighters. But Lawrence says these wages, even at the highest levels, are not enough to provide an inmate with enough money upon release or to sustain their needs from within prison.
It's hard on people's families when they are incarcerated. It costs. It costs. It really does. It costs. So being able to take some of that burden off of my family would have been excellent. But making pennies on the hour, you can't do that.
You know, I have this debate with friends all the time. As far as like how people capitalize off of people that's incarcerated. Right. Like, I fully understand it, but I speak as someone that's formerly incarcerated, and when you are free and you come home, you still have things that you have to pay for.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
Still have
I
to
feel
check
like
a box and still have to be legally discriminated against.
right. And so, going back to that example, it's like, yeah, okay, I understand that it's going to be interest, but we're talking a $3 deodorant that's probably made for what, $1?
Less than that, yeah.
Like, and then charging all of that, like, nah. But if it's $5 and people was working and they got jobs, and we can teach individuals on to really be prepared, like that's the rehabilitation, like teaching them how to manage money, like how to get into a work field, how to understand bills, how to, like, so much that comes along with just being a citizen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And not just having things handed out, because the reality of it is, like, when you inside, some people, it's hard for them to be out here, so they would rather sit in there, you know what I mean, and kind of add to it, like, oh, we're just gonna feed you, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna give you this. But when we looking at tearing the system down and rebuilding and what that looks like we got to really educate our folks, you know what I'm saying, in every way. But like, just overcharging and taking advantage, like, nah, that's not cool. You know what I'm saying? That's not cool.
Right.
They're doing the same thing that a lot of bigger corporations is doing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like Walmart, McDonald's, Tyson, others profiting off prison labor, and there's a whole prison industrial complex from a corporation profiting from the calls you make to your family,
right? From
corporations profiting from the canteen and the commissary, to all levels of, literally billions of dollars, to multi-million-dollar contracts to feed, our incarcerated brethren, right? Because three meals a day, 3 hots in a cot, right? They have these U.S. food and corporations that have $1 million contracts with prisons. And then now with our current president, with what's happening with the immigration prisons, where they're literally rebuilding up, as a way and using that as exploitative labor as well. So
right.
It's you're viewed, when you're incarcerated, you're viewed as a dollar sign in many ways.
For sure. And it's sad. But they say, oh, we gotta, take care of them. We want to give them this, we want to give them that. Like, nah, it's designed a certain way. It operates like that for a reason. You know what I'm saying? And like I say, someone that's been in there and seen it is like, oh, okay, I understand what's going on. So it's just about educating the peoples and our folks and sharing the knowledge. You know, that's how I define success, is sharing the knowledge. And that's something that, having an opportunity being here, right, is sharing knowledge and insight on, low wages for a firefighter, or markups for canteen and different things like that, like you spoke about with the phones. Oh my goodness, I remember when we was like paying a lot for phone calls.
Like, how much you say?
It was like probably hundreds.
Wow.
Like, we was paying hundreds. Like, I used to literally, when I used to call my wife and we talk inside, like, we would talk a lot.
Right.
And I would literally have to be like, okay, do I want to get a package, which is all my hygiene, food, maybe some shoes, zooms and whams, which is like $200, or do I want to get these phone calls every day?
So literally choosing between basic needs and hygienes and talking to your family, when if you're rehabilitating and growing, you need both, right? You can't deprive yourself from either, but you're having to choose between that while risking your life as a firefighter and doing other things and making monies for corporations.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, even that right there. And then, so I would say it was hundreds. I don't want to be exaggerating, but it was hundreds for sure.
No, it's a lot.
It was a lot. And now, I forget the bill of it, the name exactly, but that passed.
Right. It was a federal law passed that helped to allow that. And some states actually allow for free calls or really reduce costs. Because let's be real, the cost to actually make a phone call nowadays with internet, most of these database calls, is pennies.
Right.
But there's still some states where you're paying $3-4 to have a call for a couple minutes. You know? So the federal government is starting to step in, or was starting to step in with these different things. But now, since Trump has taken office, the private contracts for prisons and calls has changed. I believe JPay has been eliminated, which was very exploitive as well, right?
Yeah, for
but
real.
now there's another one that's actually even more exploitive. I'm working with my friend now who's in Tennessee, and I keep in contact with her, and I have to sign up for this new system. Okay. And I remember being a child, receiving the collect calls from my mother and father who were incarcerated, and it would be like $10 each just to talk to, I'm a 6-year-old. You stole my mother away. And I want to talk to her, and you're burdening my grandparents now with this big phone bill. So.
Right. Yeah. It was crazy. I know in California now though, it's free phone calls.
Yeah, free.
So, I'm appreciative for that. But, me and my wife and my moms and everybody, we clown like, well, why do they want to get free phone calls now?
Yeah, no, that's
well,
why
we need our money back.
That's why we're saying reparations.
Right,
reparations. They could have been given free phone calls.
Yeah.
And some countries literally have been doing it. Many countries like in China and others that we criticize their democracy, people who are incarcerated actually vote in China.
Right. Like, come on,
in most
for real.
countries, they just because you lost your became a second-class citizen through committing a crime or something like that doesn't mean you should lose your right to vote.
Yeah, for real.
So it's a lot of ways that people lose rights. Even if you think about being on probation supervision, right? Your right to just be in your household can be violated anytime. They don't need a warrant to walk into your house to search you or tap your phone and different things.
Right.
So it's a lot of ways that we give up rights or we accept rights being given up for people who quote unquote committed a crime. I still have to check boxes. I got incarcerated when I was a juvenile, teenager.
Oh, wow.
I still have to check boxes on some applications asking questions. And it's like, this is 20 years ago at this point,
Right. Yeah, and it's one of those things like, I don't want to say why does it matter, but it's like you still like, when I came home, I still had to pay taxes. I still had to get in the groove of things. And I was going 14 and a half years.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And I was, like you said, I was a kid. I was 19.
Wow.
I was going on 19 and came out as a grown man in my 30s, and I had to figure it out during COVID. You know what I'm saying? Ooh. During COVID. And so, and it's tough. And even speaking about that, and you spoke about JPay, and I'm going to point this out. I actually got, something going on where I got a case against JPay.
Really?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Speak on that.
For sure. So, once again, this work that I do, it just, when things just don't feel right and you got to move on that, that's just how I am. I'm very spiritual. I wouldn't necessarily say like religious,
right.
but I'm for sure spiritual, right? And so when I was coming home, paroled in 2020, you got your parole packet and it got different things in there, right? At the time, California decided, you know what? We don't want to give money to people that's coming home. We want them to keep up with times, so we're going to give them a card. That's equivalent to like a bank card, but like a prepaid card.
Okay.
Right? And JPay was the one I was like, y'all want to do what?
Oh,
okay, come on, I got you.
No.
Yeah, it gets crazy. So I remember getting it, and I'm like, what the heck? And my money is on here, so I'm like, oh, I sign it, right? I parole. I'm coming home, turned over my wife, whatever. We chilling. We had a nice space in Palm Springs, whatever. So, and then I just happened to be like, okay, let me look at some of the stuff that they gave me. And so I'm looking at this paper, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like I'm getting like you're gonna take damn near $10 for me to upload this card.
What?
Like you're gonna charge me a percentage every month for just having this card. Like it was so, and I'm telling you. I was mad. Like I was so mad that it almost threw off my night.
Yeah,
right?
Like you free now and everything.
Yeah,
they killing the vibe. Like, exploitation still.
I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So I didn't really think nothing about it, and I was getting at the time a spot for Initiate Justice wasn't open, but I was still doing a lot of work with them, right? And once you get into the work, you start making connections. So I'm like, man, who can I call to try to see what's going on? But when you're a leader and you're a freedom fighter, God is going to put you in the situations and he's going to bring in people for you to be able to move on that. You know what I'm saying? To continue to lead. And so time go on, I get a phone call, and the phone call was from this attorney that's for like human rights. And he said, hey, we getting ready to have a class lawsuit against JPay because are you aware of what they doing? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And so I end up taking the lead on that. You know what I mean? And right now we going back and forth. And of course they trying to say, well, this and that. And I'm like, listen, y'all forced this up on us. Right? We didn't have no choice to be like, do you want your money in cash or do you want a credit card? Because most people that does have family, send the money to my family.
Right.
And they would make sure I have it. So, that's one of the things that, that's like, it's just crazy because they really do look at us, I'm speaking for people that's coming home from prison, right, as a dollar sign.
Right.
And it's like, it's crazy. Like these corporations is doing that and they getting away with it, right? But I'm glad that it was already a lot of laws that was in place where my attorney was like, yo, you breaking this, yo, you breaking that, yo, you breaking this. because as a person that's getting ready to open any kind of account, right, they have to share with you the terms and the conditions. It's not just sign this. Like they just have to be explained. Like, or you know, if you can, or if you are able to read it and understand it yourself, then you know you check the box, sign, and go on. You know what I'm saying? And so. Yeah, that was with JPay. So yeah, I got a personal thing with them.
Yeah. And not you, but tens of thousands of families.
Yeah.
Like I myself, probably in the past 15 years, have given probably over $2,000 to JPay between supporting different family and friends and different things. But let's celebrate some of the victories though.
For sure.
So when it comes to canteen, at least in California, there's now a law that limits the markup. You know, so you can't have it past certain amount. So maybe the $10 deodorant now has to be like $6.
Right.
So that's some progress.
For sure.
And then also we mentioned the calls. In California, you know, you can get access to some free calls and other states are exploring it. And there's a federal cap on what can happen, you know, versus just 10 years ago when they were literally on both of those things. You could charge what you want for phone calls, for Doritos, for whatever you want, for ramen noodles, you know, and so we're celebrating that. Something else that's also been happening more is you're seeing more reentry programs and programs that support, you know, healing and rehabilitation in authentic ways, as opposed to just probation oversight or parole oversight, you know, because supervision is not services, right? Supervision is not services. There's a difference. What are some things that have been helpful for you in terms of, you know, reentry and reintegrating? Because 14 years, as you mentioned, that's a long time. If you go on at 19 and come out into your 30s, you basically miss your whole 20s.
Yeah.
But what are some things that were helpful for you when you came out, or what are some things that would have been more helpful for you to transition?
If COVID wasn't around,
oh Lord, I can only imagine that.
Man, COVID was crazy because like right when I came home, it was like right when they shut it down, but they wasn't too sure if they wanted to open it back up. It was in September. I was blessed. I was blessed to be able to have a strong support system.
Nice.
Good family. I had a lot of friends. You know, my wife been there with me as well. So it was. I don't want to say it was hard, and then too, it's who you get, right? It's who you get. You know. We got people that works on that other side that's into supervision and into law and different things, and they really want to try to make a change, right?
Nice.
And okay, cool, I understand it. And I was blessed to have someone that was like that.
Nice.
Like he's gonna do his job,
right? He's gonna hold you accountable.
I didn't give him no reason, right? When he see who I was in prison, he see me coming home, he's like, "Oh man, it's an honor to meet you," and I'm like, "What?" You know what I'm saying? So I didn't realize, like, you know, what you do and who you are and how you carry yourself really pays off. So he was like, listen, this is what I have. And once again, he's somebody he was a person that was like, worked in the system and was like, oh no, this ain't for me. And so he was like, yo, I think I'd be more better over here, because his background was in psychology and different things. You know what I'm saying? So he just understood things on another level. But what I'm trying to say is he provided like a resource type of thing, because they now probation or parole, when people coming home, they got to have resources, or they got to have, you know, things to say, hey, this is what you giving them, and then just saying, hey, show up to this class, show up to this AA class, show up to this drug class, whatever.
Urine, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And now a person that's on supervision, you have to be able to say, yo, this is my duty, this is what I'm about to do. So it's a collaborative type of thing. And so I came home right in where they was like, this is our new pilot program, this is what we doing, right? And so he provided they got, I forget what they call them. They call them PAC meetings. I forget exactly what it means, but pretty much it's like a resource fair, but for people that's formerly incarcerated, and all the parole agents and all the probation agents is bringing they caseloads to this place, and now they're going around to different tables and getting resources.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? So I did attend that, but even then it was just like, it was over Zoom. I'm like, I'm not trying to, you know what I'm saying, do the Zoom, which it wasn't hard for me, but you know, me coming home, I was already connected to this work. So like my first Zoom meetings and different things like that was with judges, with senators and assembly members, because working for Initiate Justice, that's who we need to talk to, right? We understand that being a constituent, right? Okay, I need to know who my assembly member is. I need to know who my assembly member is. And so I was doing a lot of work like that. So I kept it centered around working with Initiate Justice and organizing and different things like that. But it had its struggles. You know, it had its struggles. I do know what it feels like to come home, get a job. I was working at a homeless shelter, and you know, I was happy, but it was conflicting because it was like, yo, I just came from prison and now I'm kind of doing the same thing, right? Like I gotta walk around, make sure they bed area is good, and make sure, you know, it was hard mentally because I just did 14.5 years,
right,
and I was only out 2 months at the time, and so I was working at the place for like 3-4 days, and then I ended up calling the agency that hired me, and I was like, yo, like, what's going on with my pay, this and this and this, and she was like, wait, what? She's like, what you doing right now? Like, I'm getting ready to go to work. She's like, oh, don't go in today. And I'm like, wow, like, why? She was like, I have my peoples reach out to you. And I was like, okay, well, she didn't say my peoples, but she was like, I have someone reach out to you. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm like, man, this is weird, right? And then I end up calling back, and I end up talking to her. She was like, yeah, well, we had to let you go because your background came back.
Oh, no.
Oh, that crushed me. That crushed me. So I was like, oh, wow. So, you know, I got fired, whatever. And then it was still tough. Once again, this is all through COVID. And then I was gonna go back to do the firefighter program, right? To be a wildland firefighter. Once again, I'm an energy person, right? The person that I was on the phone with, she wasn't really too welcoming, and I was triggered. I was like, nah, this, like, even though it was discipline, in my mind at the time, I heard prison. You know what I mean? And anything that makes me feel like I'm controlled, or I don't want to feel like that. You know what I mean?
No, that's a response, especially after spending 14 years under that control.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a thing called post-traumatic prison complex, you know, where the conditions of being incarcerated, being in a cage where we're not even supposed to keep animals, being in there after a certain amount of time will have some effects like that. So.
And so she responded, and I was like, I don't know about this, but something just kept telling me, initiate justice, because I had a mentor when I was inside, and I used to talk to him. He said, hey, man, when you come home, we got a spot for you. Just stay connected. So that was always in the back of my head. And once again, I was doing things, and I was just like, yeah, this is where I need to be. So I decided to just continue to, you know, volunteer and support with Initiate Justice in a position to open up.
Nice.
And then I've been flying with them since 2016, but as far as like staff, 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you for the work you've been doing.
Appreciate it.
All right, last question I have. So you also turn to music as a form of healing, activism, and different things. And I understand you have a band called Top Shelf.
Yeah.
Right?
Top Shelf, baby.
Yeah, Top Shelf.
Yeah,
nice.
for sure.
So talk about what music does for you and, you know, what it did for you on the inside, what it's doing for you now, and everything.
Yeah, for sure. So what music did for me, I'm going to start with that question first. What music did for me inside, well, I always grew up doing music when I was younger, but what it did for me inside was a way to connect and a way to tell a story and to just speak and to get the attention of people, right? When you can put information or education in the music form and people is vibing with you and they understand where you're going and it's healing to them, it's amazing. And so that was something I was doing from, you know, beating on my chest to beating on the tables to teaching myself how to play the guitar to being in all the music programs. It's funny because I actually had a friend that was over and she was like, I remember when you was doing the music program. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still doing it. But these are things that, you know, God prepared me for. And so I came home and continue to do music and just share my story. More so surrounded by love and wanting love, but being incarcerated and being distant from that. And then I just started implementing different things that's related to the work that I do. And then I just kept doing it. And I'm the type of entertainer, the person, because I rap and do R&B hip hop.
Nice.
I'm the type of person where I love live music because I'm a musician. And so I connected with my brother, ended up connecting with like one of his best friends, and his best friend ended up becoming my best friend and my business partner. Shout out to Chris McCorkle. So we started Top Shelf, named by Bruno Mars. So yeah,
really?
yeah. So that's how I got into it. And so now we actually do shows. We throw all our own shows. We more so on the business side. So it's funny because a lot of activism that I do with organizing and different things is the same thing that we're doing in the music world. And just to shine a little light on that is, you know, certain politics behind musicians and different things. But what we do that's different, outside of bringing good live entertainment and energetic, we businessmen. You know what I mean? So we're not just gonna say, oh, okay, y'all just gonna pay us, and then we want to, we want some of the bar. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we want some of the tables.
At the end of the day,
we
you're
want that standing
professionals,
section. We professionals. So that's what we bring, and everything is fine at the top shelf. So that's how we rocking it for sure.
All right, share maybe either a song or a quote, a bar or something. Give us you ain't gotta, we ain't gotta harmonize right now. But just give me a little something for the people.
Okay.
What's one of your favorite songs or one of your favorite lyrics that you wrote?
Oh, that's a good question. One of my favorite quotes, and a lot of people has heard this before, but I like a twist. I put a twist to it. I say, don't be afraid to take a leap of faith. Just pray you grow wings on the way down. You know what I'm saying? So that's just, I live by that. It's, you know what you're doing, and you know that you guided, and you going that way. All it takes is you to really kind of just jump off the edge and really fly. It's
nice. It's
equivalent to looking at a baby bird, right? The mother nurtures the baby, get them nice, built and strong, feeding, and then when it's time for you to fly, you fly.
Nice.
And if the bird hold their head down and go, it's gonna hit the ground. But if the bird look up and start flapping their wings, you're gonna take off flying. You're gonna go from flying to soaring. So that's one of my favorite lines.
Nice, soaring. Well, brother, I'm glad you got your wings and you're out here soaring on your leaps of faith, and that y'all bringing the funk at top shelf. Whatever. Can't wait to check y'all out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's connect for sure.
Yeah. All right, anything else you want to share with the folks, the watchers, before we wrap up?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you. Get involved. Learn who your assembly members is, your senators. They are the people that make the choices for us, and we have the influence for them to make those choices. Follow me at AceMinV, ACEMIMV, and you can find all the information with Top Shelf Band and everything that I'm doing with Initiate Justice right there at AceMinV, ACEMIMV.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you beating on your chest and finding a pen and basically finding ways to express yourself. That was key for me too when I was incarcerated. Basically using that pen to liberate myself from those walls. And even today, as an artist, I'm known as Dr. Knucklehead. Someone still finding ways to liberate myself through art. And I mean, I might have to join y'all band for a little bit and rock with y'all a little something.
We always down for collaboration.
Absolutely.
Always down for collaboration. Sure.
Because music is a tool for both healing and liberation, right? It's like internally, you can use it to heal yourself. You can use it to heal communities and empower folks, but also, finding that escape, finding that liberation. And then, I think about hip hop for me growing up was that knowledge, right? Things we weren't learning in school. Lots of laws and different things, civics basically being taught through hip hop. If you listen to Public Enemy or Nas or different artists, Kendrick Lamar and different people dropping gems in hip hop.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's cool that you say that too. And something that I'm working on right now is called MusicWithAMessage. And so, that's an org that I'm getting ready to start.
Nice.
Where it talks about healing and different things. And it's people that's formerly incarcerated, and we going inside and we putting on shows and concerts inside of prison. Yeah.
Wow, that would be really powerful.
Yeah, that's something we for sure can collaborate on. I know that for sure.
Absolutely. So, I have a nonprofit, Project Knucklehead, where we specifically work with incarcerated folks, starting with the young youth and then going up to adults. But that's where we say free to youth. And when we say free to youth, we're talking about freeing them from the cages, but also freedom of expression. Because like we said, that's a form of liberation.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's connect.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam. Thanks for the work you do, brother.
Appreciate it. Likewise.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for tuning into the Know Your Rights Camp podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Your Rights Camp and check out our YouTube channel at Know Your Rights Camp.